And now, without further ado, I want to welcome back on Inside the Jackals Head from SupermanHomepage.com, Mr. Steve Younis himself. Steve, welcome back to the show, my friend. Long time we haven't had you on.
Thanks, Jackal. Yeah, it's been a while. It's good to be back.
You know, Steve, a lot has happened since the last time you've been on the show. We've really had a lot of major events happen in the world of Superman. It's been a crazy couple of years here. Last time we talked, we had them looking at Zack Snyder for Superman, for directing this film, and we're all like giddy about it. The movie's come and gone, and now that the movie's gone, now we've been talking about the sequel, and this 2014 is starting to shape up pretty interesting when it comes to news, huh?
Yeah, there are lots of rumors and speculation and reports going around. It's hard to know what to believe, what to throw out. It's getting crazy, and now that they've pushed it back to 2016, the craziness is just going to be prolonged.
Now let's just lay some rumors to rest, because I'm sure you're like I said earlier in the show. If there's anybody on the internet that knows some of the answers and can at least give us some closure, is Steve Younis. The movie's not going to get canned, so far as we know, right?
Yeah, look, I think a lot of people who have been throwing that one out are either disappointed with what's been happening, didn't like Man of Steel, don't like Ben Affleck, whatever their reason may be.
Right.
It's more like wish fulfillment or wishful thinking on their part that this whole thing just gets dropped and that they get their version of the characters that they want. So, look, there's too much money involved in this for Warner Brothers to can it. It's no matter how long it takes them to get it on the big screen, it's going to be a money spinner for them.
I mean, again, it's Batman versus Superman. I mean, that alone should attract some people. But it is funny how there's been so much negative vibe towards the casting of this movie. Even Wonder Woman with Gal Gadot getting cast, that was kind of a massive there was a massive backlash to that news, which was kind of odd. I haven't seen her that much, but what are your thoughts of her casting as Wonder Woman?
Well, like everybody else, I was a bit, shocked or surprised. I mean, I don't know who I had in mind. I didn't necessarily have anybody in my mind as being cast as Wonder Woman. I was surprised that Wonder Woman was going to be in the film, period. But a lot of people were looking at Jamie Alexander from the Thor movies, as she noted that she'd been tried out for it, and a lot of people thought that she would be fantastic. Because they've seen her in a role that's similar to Wonder Woman in her role as Seffi on the Thor film. So it wasn't a stretch for people to imagine her in a similar role as Wonder Woman. Gal Gadot, on the other hand, is a lot slimmer, a lot more petite. She's only been in people only know her from her role mainly in the Fast and the Furious film. So for them, it's a bit of a stretch to see her in that role. But then, from my perspective, go back to 1977 when the same thing was with Christopher Reeve. You got this skinny, sandy-haired guy who looked nothing like Superman as far as what was in the comic books, and he had a lot of work to do to get into the physical aspect of the role, and look how that's turned out. So, like with any of the actors, Henry Cavill, anybody from Man of Steel had to go through a huge process of bodybuilding and physical sculpting to get to the physical nature of the role that they'll be playing, and I think Gal Gadot will do the same thing.
You got to admit, though, it's going to be kind of tough for her to grow a backside and cleavage, and they can CGI that stuff, I guess.
Well, even the costumes themselves. There's a lot of padding that goes into costumes, regardless of how big the person is. Henry Cavill's costume obviously would have had some definition in there because any kind of compression suit that you wear, any type of tights that you wear, is going to compress the muscles that are there regardless.
Right.
Yes, they showed Henry with his shirt off to prove that, yes, he is as big as he needs to be, but there would have still been some definition in the lining of the costume to
Correct.
Get the abs and all the muscular definition that is required for a superhero film these days. And look, I'm sure they'll do something along those lines with Gal. I'm sure she'll build up and put on weight that's necessary, and they'll do whatever they need to do in the costume department at the same time to make her be the Wonder Woman that we expect.
You know what it is, and I've come to this conclusion, Steve, that what it is the fanboys, and gotta love them because the fanboys is what keeps the buzz going on the internet, especially.
True.
But the fanboys always have this vision of whatever the character is in their mind, and I think for like the last 20, 30 years, maybe even longer, Wonder Woman has been drawn a certain way. In cartoons, she's seen a certain way. So when they see somebody that doesn't fit like that version, they can't let go and understand that they could fix that later. They just flip out, It's
Well, I think
it's kind of like molded into their mind, kind of.
yeah, I think a perfect example of that is in the fan casting that goes on for, say, like a role like like Lex Luthor. Every bald actor that's in existence is currently being considered for Lex Luthor as far as the fans are concerned.
Yeah.
We can't think, fanboys cannot think outside the box and think that any actor could be put into that role with a head shave or whatever it might be. Michael Rosenbaum was a perfect example of that on the
Correct.
Smallville TV series. Had
Yep.
a full head of hair and they shaved his head, and he's one of the best Lex Luthors we've seen. So looking at people like Michael Cranston or anybody that's currently got a bald head that's on TV or movies is a bit short-sighted in my opinion as far as casting is concerned.
The Bryan Cranston thing is really funny because he looks nothing like Lex Luthor, acts nothing like Lex Luthor, but he would be like a perfect Jim Gordon, for example, in Batman universe. I mean, that's like the role the dude was perfectly born for, man. Like you look at him and you look, especially like the Batman Year One Jim Gordon and with a mustache. I mean, that's him. He looks like he just walked out of the comic books. I don't know why fans are like hung up on him being Lex, but if you want to think outside the box, who I think would be a perfect Lex besides Billy Zane, who I think is he was born to play Lex Luthor, but thinking outside the box, I would go with somebody like Brad Pitt.
Right. Okay. Well, I mean, he's got the acting chops, I guess, and he's got the Hollywood name behind it, as they seem to be doing with a lot of these roles, trying to get supporting actors in big name actors in supporting roles. The Joaquin Phoenix is also, his name's been thrown in.
That's another good candidate. Yeah.
And he's a very intense type of actor who could do the role justice, and we've seen him play the villain. In the opposite Russell Crowe in Gladiator, and so we know he has that ability to be that type of that character, who you love to hate. But I guess we'll wait and see if Lex Luthor is even in the film to start with.
That's another thing. Why do you think they're so hesitant on announcing something for Lex? Because it looks like they've been casting this role for months, and they really haven't announced anything. Especially if the script is something that was done, and now they're reworking the script. We know Lex is definitely in there. What's taking so long in casting this one character?
Well, I don't know whether or not it's taking so long, or whether it's just Warner Brothers keeping their cards close to their chest. I mean, when you think about it, what do we really know in an official capacity for this film? All we really know is, yes, they're making the movie. Yes, Batman's going to be in it, and he is going to be played by Ben Affleck. And yes, Wonder Woman will be in it in some capacity.
Right.
She's been cast as Gal Gadot. But beyond that, we've heard that Chris Terrio, the guy from screenwriter from Argo, has been brought in to either look at the script or refine the script. We don't know whether there's a script problem or whether he's just an additional person who's been brought in because of Ben Affleck's influence. We don't know anything really beyond that. Everything beyond those things that I've just mentioned is all speculation or supposed sources on the inside giving us that information. And studios these days are big into passing on misinformation. How many times have we seen actors come out denying they've been cast in the role, and the next day it's been officially announced that they are in that role?
No kidding. It's funny how every hot young actor now in Hollywood is kind of being thrown in there for roles. They're like Jason Momoa's name has been thrown in there. Joaquin Phoenix, like you mentioned, has been thrown in there. But it seems like if you're somewhere in The Rock, if you're one of these hot actors, you're being kind of called on to work in this movie, which is really funny. But I think as a fanboy, we all kind of just want them to announce something already. I'm like, check this out. I'm gonna say it live on air here. I don't know if my listeners know my view on this, but I'm happy that they moved this movie back a year. I think it's better for the production. It's better for the movie. I'm not a big Goyer fan when it comes to his writing myself, so I actually enjoy that I'm happy that they got one of the writers from Argo and brought him over. He's a good writer, and I think that's actually a very good move for the production. It means at least thinking of the script and thinking of the story they're trying to tell. They're not trying to rush this thing, and it's not a bad thing. I mean, we've had 3 years between superhero movies in the past with The Dark Knight, so it's not really that big of a stretch, is it? And
No, not at all. No, and look, it's funny because on one hand you've got all these fans saying, "Oh, they're rushing it," and now when they push it back 10 months,
yeah,
oh,
now
what's
they're
the big
pissed.
delay?
You
You
can't
can't
make
win
them
like you're
happy.
saying.
These fanboys, I tell you, you can't make these guys happy.
They're a fickle bunch.
No kidding. But it's true. I mean, I think, like I said, it's a good thing for the movie. It's going to not only that, allow now a little bit more time for the actors to build their bodies up and become these characters. Because, I think Ben just got off another movie, or he's doing another movie, and he's not still in Batman shape. So, he might need a little bit more time to get to that shape. Even though he's playing an old, weary Batman. What's that about?
Yeah, I'm not sure where they're going with that or how. I mean, I wasn't really pleased with that idea. I have seen photos of Ben Affleck in recent times, and he seems to have built up quite a bit. There was this rumor going on about him being injured in some capacity. One report was he had a leg injury. Another one was
Right,
a rib
yeah, he
injury.
broke his leg. Yeah.
And that's what the delay was about. But supposedly that's been debunked. He was seen in the SAG Awards the other night. He wasn't limping, so it's not a leg injury. Whether it's a rib injury, that's harder to tell, just seeing a person. So, that's another rumor that's, unfounded at this point in time. I guess we probably will never know if there's any truth behind that one. But, yeah, as a Superman fan, I've always loved the idea of Superman being the first superhero that inspired others. I mean, that's the reality in the comic book world.
Right.
He was the first, and then Batman came after, and all the other comic book characters followed. Thanks to Superman's popularity. But in the movie world, as far as the continuity of the movie itself, the story that it's trying to tell, obviously Superman is not the first because Batman is semi-retired, old, weary, has been doing it for a while, is semi-retired, as you said.
Right.
Which means that Superman, being at the beginning of his career, is new on the scene, and it could work. I don't know I don't know how they plan to offset the two of them, what kind of confrontation there'll be, whether it'll be physical, whether it'll be just a matter of opinion of I don't like the way you approach things. No, I don't like the way you do things. You're an alien. Look at all the destruction you caused. I don't know what their angle is as far as the story is concerned. But look, it could work. It will be interesting to see how that's played off and how that continues the universe, because if he is semi-retired, then how much longer
Where do you go
can
from
Batman...
there?
Yeah, where do you go from there? Exactly, for future movies, which they're saying Affleck will be on board for.
Well, here's another thing. If there's a history of superheroes pre Men of Steel, that means that maybe Wonder Woman was involved before. So the alien invasion that happened wasn't the first time we've encountered possibly aliens or beings from another realm or another dimension or something on that planet. So that kind of
you think you think Perry White would have known that in Man of Steel? He says, "Can you imagine how people would react if they knew that there was somebody out there like
right.
this?" Or, so I don't think there have been any kind of an alien presence before. We know that Bruce Wayne exists in that universe because we saw the Wayne Tech logo on the satellite,
right.
and we know that Luthor exists because of the Luthor Corp logos that have on certain elements in the film, be it buildings or semi-trailers or whatever they may be. But there is a hint towards a larger DC universe in the Man of Steel universe, but
Correct,
we don't know how, in what capacity superheroes have necessarily been referenced.
Yeah, well, again, just as I'm talking about it, I'm thinking of an easy way to get around that. She shows up because she found out from the Amazon that there's a guy with superpowers on Earth, and she has to go see what's going on there. So, and it just so happened that that's when Batman said, "Hey, this guy made a mess in Metropolis. I got to go see what happened." And then there's a guy from the ocean named Aquaman who says, "Gotta go see what happens." And he, swims up to the shore and sees what happens. And speaking of Aquaman, Josh Holloway from Lost is being looked at for a possible casting in this movie. I like that casting. That's honestly probably the first casting in this movie that I really say, "Damn, that's a good casting if they get him. He's dead on perfect for that role." What do you think of Josh Holloway?
Yeah, I only know him from his character as Sawyer in the TV series Lost, but I like him. I think he could definitely visually play the part. There is talk that he's tied up with his new TV series, which seems to have been doing pretty well. But now that we've pushed back to 2016, that may free him up and allow him time if he is indeed in this movie, or if it's a Justice League movie that they're looking at further down the track for him to be a part of.
Well, that brings, we were talking about this off air, the possibility that Justice League is right around the corner, because they did announce that they're going to do back-to-back movies, and that could very well be why they moved this movie, like you said, to 2016 because of the Justice League. How do you feel about that, the shooting of the two films back-to-back like that?
Yeah, it's a rumor that originated on Latino Review.
They're very credible, by the way.
Yeah, they have pretty good credibility in some capacity. I mean, it depends on what your angle is or what you think of their reporters. But that is a big call, and it's not it's not unprecedented. Superman the movie and Superman 2 were to mostly filmed back to back until Richard Donner was fired from continuing on the second film. But yeah, majority of those two movies were shot back to back, and that's back in the late 70s. So the last two Matrix films, similar kind of thing. Whether or not we want to speak about them, I don't know. But it's not something that hasn't been done before. And there's a possibility with all these rumors of certain actors and certain characters being included in the follow-up to Man of Steel. Look, anything's possible. I guess now that they've pushed the movie back to May 2016, that's probably adding a bit more weight to that rumor of films being back-to-back. I guess time will tell.
I'll tell you right now, if you want to use something to compare it, don't compare it to anything with The Matrix 2 and 3, because, my God. Man, those movies are bad. Yeah, that doesn't make me feel fuzzy and warm inside about the Superman movies. No, not at all. It just worries me even more. Here's the thing. Like I said, I'm all for it. I still think it's a good idea. I think, I like the writer they're bringing in. I'm comfortable with the fact that they're taking their time, but I don't know about this shooting these two movies back to back, because honestly, it really feels like they're not giving Superman his own sequel, which is another thing I'm kind of upset at. I really wanted to see Man of Steel 2, and that, that universe expand a little bit, and then, bridge off with Man of Steel versus Batman, or Batman versus Superman, or whatever you want to call it, and then do that third film with them together, and then in 2017 or 18 maybe do a Justice League movie. I could wait. I'm in pretty good shape. I'm in pretty good health. I think I'll make it to 2020. I think I can make it and wait and get good films. I don't want to see this rush job, and it's all because of the Avengers and Marvel, isn't it? That's really what it is. I think they just want to compete so bad that they're doing this.
Well, I was very much in the same train of thought as you, of being disappointed that they weren't, that Batman was being thrown in to a Superman sequel, because it was announced at Comic-Con by Zack Snyder. Yes, we're doing another Superman movie, but Batman's going to be in it. And when he used that quote from The Dark Knight Returns to use that, and as part of that announcement, it sent shivers up my spine, not in a good way, because I'm thinking, no, I don't want to see Superman belittled by Batman. I mean, in his own sequel. But I've had time to think on it and use the Thor movies as a reference point, because when you think about it, Thor had his own solo film, and then the next time we saw him, he was in the Avengers, and now he's got his sequel, a standalone sequel. And so there's no reason something like that couldn't happen for the Man of Steel character. We saw Man of Steel. Now we get this team up movie. No matter who, whether it's Batman, whether it's Wonder Woman, whoever else is in it, and then possibility of of another standalone Superman film after that. That's always a possibility. And the more, when they announced that Wonder Woman was going to be in this movie as well, it kind of, my nerves weren't as much on edge, because then people can't just go and say, oh, well, the only reason this was popular is because Batman was in it. There is, with all these other characters, there's a lot more for people to come along and see. It's not just Batman stealing Superman's thunder.
Yeah, no, and I'm going to answer somebody in the chat room here who's saying, "Come on, don't be us as Jackal." Saying that I really wanted to see Man of Steel 2. Actually, no, I really did. Mind you, I wasn't a fan of the first one. I've openly admitted it. I was very disappointed. I thought the movie was badly directed, badly written. David Goyer, I'm not a fan. Didn't like the cast, but I'll tell you this much: it's Superman, and I wanted to see where they would take it. Just to see what the heck happened. Like the same thing, I wanted to see Superman Returns too, just to see where they were going to go with that, and see if maybe they could build on that. And there's always the possibility that they can get it right in the sequel. There's always that shot. I'm really like I've told you before. The one person who really got shafted in this whole thing is Brandon Routh, who got his one movie, and now what's he doing again these days? He's a nice guy, but nobody's heard from him since Superman Returns, and it's sad. And that's, to me, I thought they should have done a sequel to that just to see what happens. Even though, again, I didn't like Superman Returns, but yes. 2.0, Alex, I would actually have liked to just seen a standalone movie because they didn't develop the character, I think, properly in the first movie. The pacing was kind of off. I know you loved the movie, but did you find anything negative at all of the movie? Because I know there's been a lot of talk with all the stuff that the movie has, all the flaws, and there's videos. I know you're a Superman fan, so I know you do your searching online like the rest of us, and you go to websites, and I know you've seen some of the stuff that people's posted on, like some of the major flaws in the movie and stuff.
Yeah, look, I think as any movie you watch, there are plot points that could have been developed more, or there are characters that could have been developed more. But in all, sitting back, kind of, just enjoying the film. I did enjoy it. I was shocked at what happened with Zod at the end. But that's where you're saying about seeing a sequel to Man of Steel and seeing how they follow on. I think that is very important for this film because, like everybody was saying, it's the whole no-kill thing. Where does that come from? And you can tell that Superman was totally beside himself in having to come to that conclusion. And there's all the technology that's been left behind by the Kryptonians, Zod's suit, the spaceship possibly in the Arctic that he took down there before he took the scout ship. The destruction of a portion of Metropolis, how that gets rebuilt, what kind of involvement Lex Luthor might have in rebuilding the city, Bruce Wayne, all those kinds of things could be picked up on in a sequel and would obviously have ramifications for the story moving on to see just how Superman deals with what he had to do and how the world now sees him and what his responsibilities are and how Clark Kent manages being in a new position at the Daily Planet and his relationship with Lois Lane and how that progresses. So there's a lot for this, the continuation of what Man of Steel left us. What a lot of people criticized Man of Steel was, their criticism for Man of Steel was that they didn't think Superman cared enough about people or didn't save enough people. And my comeback to that all the time is that we're talking about a Superman, not like Christopher Reeve's Superman who'd been doing it for a while, who had, trained and all these kinds of things. We're talking about a Superman who's been around for all of 5 minutes. And doesn't know what his responsibilities are, doesn't even know the full capacity of his powers, and yet he's being thrust into this confrontation with the people of his own world who have equal amount of power, and and the world doesn't trust him. So there's a lot of that he doesn't know about himself. This is a movie of discovery, and now we get to see in the future movies the Superman develop that we all know and love.
You got to answer one question for me, though, because this still boggles my mind about that movie. How did Perry White and Jenny Olsen run away and escape a falling building?
Well, firstly, she wasn't Jenny Olsen. We know that for a fact.
Did they officially announce that it's not Jenny Olsen?
If you look at the film and you actually zoom in on her name tag, she's got a surname a second name that's not Olsen. Okay. I think that was a rumor that she perpetuated the actress herself by just because it was something that was going to create a lot of publicity for her as an actress, so she didn't deny it. But look, the Daily Planet wasn't in the epicenter of where the destruction was. It was it was blocks further down. We know that there was a number of city blocks destroyed by the beam. From the ship, from the Kryptonian ship and the World Engine. How many people died, how many buildings were destroyed is up for debate. Zack Snyder himself, who's the director, who obviously had a hand in the writing of the movie, says that was maybe 5,000 people tops. So it's hard to say that Jenny and Perry couldn't have escaped because they weren't at the epicenter, the Daily Planet.
No, but
they
you
could
remember
see out
that
their
one?
windows
There's
where it was
that one
happening.
scene where they're running away from like a skyscraper, and the skyscraper's falling like right on them, and somehow they're faster than the skyscraper. I thought maybe Perry White was really the Flash in disguise, because I was like, holy moly, how did he escape that falling skyscraper? And why couldn't that technology be used on 9/11? Seriously, because he was quick with it, man, and then he helps whatever her name is escape from the building that's on top of her, and she's still alive. How did that, like?
Well,
There's,
I mean, we're
there's a
looking
lot
at
of
a
like,
particular
there,
angle. I mean,
there's a lot of parts of the movie though. You got to admit that you have to like suspend disbelief a lot.
well, we're talking about an alien who looks exactly like humans, so of course you have to suspend your disbelief. But you will believe a man can fly. It's up to you. How much you want to nitpick at a particular scene, or how critical you want to be of a particular movie. But all in all, I think it was pretty well done.
Yeah, I'll say this: the action definitely was top notch, and I've always said that if you're going just to see it for the action was probably some of the best live action superhero stuff ever. And
Yeah, no,
I
agreed.
mean, but again, the fans, man, they and I'm one of them. Have pointed out so many problems with the movie. It's that's why I'm kind of happy they're bringing in this other writer to look at the script, because again, I think the main problem was that Nolan kind of left Goyer and said, "All right, here, make the script, finish it," and Goyer took over, and he did his David Goyer thing, and we almost ended up with something as bad as Blade Trinity. Almost, not quite, but almost. Once again, everybody, we're joined by Steve Younis of SupermanHomepage.com, and he is actually calling us from the future. That's right. He is our very own time traveler. And we've been talking about the ongoing drama that is Superman vs. Batman, the sequel to Man of Steel, and that's coming out now in 2016. And again, to reiterate, I'm happy that they're taking their time. It's a good thing that they're taking their time.
Yeah, definitely. Did you want to explain the whole time travel thing you just mentioned? People probably out there scratching their heads.
Well, you know what? I've actually had two time travelers on this show. I had one on the 29th of December. I had UFO Phil, who's a good friend of our show here. He was on, and he was calling from 2015. Actually, he was calling from all the way in the future. We'll talk. I'll tell you later a little bit more about UFO Phil. You'll laugh later even harder, because now you're probably like, wait a second, Jackal's losing his mind. But anyway, no, Steve Younis here, of course, is calling from tomorrow. Just right now, of course, it's still Sunday night. It's going to be Monday at midnight here, but you're calling in from Australia, so it's like almost 3 p.m. in your time right now?
That's right, 3:05 in the afternoon.
Look at that, 3 in the afternoon on a Monday afternoon. Mm-hmm. So it's Monday afternoon there, it's Sunday night here. He is from the future, man. We can time travel, see?
There you go.
You don't need a flux capacitor, no DeLorean, nothing, just Skype.
That's it.
That's all you need, baby. Skype. But welcome back from the future, Steve Younis, and continue, this Superman talk. Again, if anybody wants to call in and ask you anything, please do so. Steve is here to take your phone calls and answer any questions. But I got, a bunch more questions for you. And here's a big question for you. Who do you want to see as Lex Luthor? I mean, personally.
Oh, that's a tough question. I've never really been one to look at casting the films myself. You just lend yourself to disappointment if you have a particular face in mind and it doesn't end up being who you think it is. So you've got a preconceived idea and then you go in disappointed. If Lex Luthor is in the film, and there are a lot of people who don't want Lex Luthor in another Superman film because they think he's been done to death, having been in 3 of the 4 Christopher Reeve films, and the whole Superman Returns thing with the whole land aspect of the character. I think Lex can be done differently in a future movie. But, I don't mind the idea of Joaquin Phoenix because it's somebody totally out of left field who is a great actor and has the acting chops to pull off, the smarminess of Lex Luthor, especially the public figure Lex Luthor that I hope that they include in the movie. Not this underground, villain, but more of a businessman who, is in control of a majority of Metropolis and thinks he's above the law, but nobody can really nail anything to him personally. So yeah, I don't really mind who they go with as long as it's an actor who can pull off that type of role.
It was reported that Michael Rosenbaum wanted a shot at it. What do you think of bringing him in as Lex? The fans
I
loved him
don't.
on the show.
Yeah, I don't see that happening. The same thing with Tom Welling. Everyone was crying for him to be cast as Superman in a
Right.
movie. I mean, they very rarely mix TV with the film industry, unless it's a direct, a movie from a TV series. You don't pick out Lex Luthor from a TV show who doesn't have the rest of the cast with him in the same roles. It just doesn't make sense. It confuses a lot of moviegoers. He'd be a bit young. I'm thinking of Lex as a businessman who's been around for a while, and who may be of the same vintage as what Batman or Bruce Wayne is supposed to be in this film. So someone who's of similar age and experience as Bruce Wayne is in his world. There could be a possibility of those two characters having some kind of a business connection that would link Metropolis and Gotham together. So I would think of somebody more, a more mature actor for the role.
Yeah, no, I'm with you, definitely. And even though I did love Michael Rosenbaum, and there's, there is always a chance down the road in the future they might do a Smallville TV movie or something like that. Who knows? That's always possible. I guess if Tom Welling never gets another acting gig, he might be able to call up and be like, "Please, guys."
Depends on how strapped for cash he is.
Yeah, no, but he's done pretty well. Parkland was a good movie, man. I saw Parkland, and he was excellent. Have you checked out that film yet?
No, I haven't. And I believe he's trying to get more behind the camera these days. But I don't see Tom Welling ever donning the Superman costume because that, like as you said, that whole no tights, no flights thing was his doing. So I wouldn't necessarily see him changing his mind and going back against his word.
Well, there's been a lot of debate about that, and maybe you can answer it and put this one to bed. There's, of course, the debate that some people say that, like you said, that he was the one that initiated the no tights, no flights. But there are also talk that the original creators of the show that are the ones that put that rule in there, and then he only got attracted to it because of that preconceived rule that they had already on there before, because they didn't want to go that route. They didn't want to remake Superboy, for example.
Well, I guess that's a possibility. I'm only going from what Alison Mack, who played Chloe Sullivan in the TV show, said live at a question and answer session in the Superman celebration in Metropolis,
Oh, what
Illinois.
does she know? She was just there, What does she know? She was only there.
She said that she answered that question and said that it was Tom's insistence. So whether or not he originated the idea or whether he just stuck to his guns after it was an initial subject, I don't know.
Do you think they'll have a no capes, no cowl in this Gotham TV series?
I haven't followed too much the news about this Gotham TV series. From what I just kind of, glancing at the news items as they came across my screen, I thought that Bruce Wayne would be, a young boy. I don't know necessarily we'll ever see anything of him coming towards the Batman idea. I don't really know, but I don't think that we'll necessarily see any Batman in the show because it's supposed to be more about the Gotham police side of things, from what I understood.
I was surprised they announced that the Joker was going to be in this thing, though, and some of the other villains from the Batman universe. That kind of surprised me because if you're not going to show Batman, why would you show the Joker? It's kind of weird.
Maybe showing what type of Gotham he's inheriting and why he decides that he needs to come out of the out from the mansion,
the shadows,
and become the Batman.
I'm Batman. That's my Batman voice. You like it? I'm Batman. Okay. I hope Ben could do something like that because look, Christian Bale got a lot of flack for his Batman voice, but of all the Batmans, he's the only one that would actually make me like poop my pants if I ever heard that in real life. Because George Clooney's I'm Batman, freeze. That did nothing to me. Honestly, I could nothing. George, Val Kilmer, nothing. Michael Keaton. I'm Batman. It was kind of okay, but when you hear Christian Bale, like his growl, man, I would if somebody did that to me in person, I'm telling you, I'm a big dude, but I might just be pooping myself. That was pretty intimidating. So I hope Ben has that kind of growl in him because I'm Batman. I want something like that. Like
Yeah,
I
I
don't
just
know.
hope he doesn't go to the same extent because you could hardly understand a lot of the things he was saying. But yeah, something of a bit of a gruffiness in his voice would be good.
Right. And man, I tell you what, there's not. I don't think there's going to be ever a Batman that kind of uh, could recreate that one scene in Batman Begins where he's talking to the Scarecrow, and he poisons the Scarecrow, and the Scarecrow starts like tripping, and he sees Batman and it looks all demonic and stuff. To me, that's like the most epic and iconic Batman scene ever. I hope one day we might see something that cool again on screen. Like, I mean, what are your thoughts of the Nolan trilogy now that it's completely done and we've are done with that trilogy? When you look back
Mm.
at it,
Yeah, it's I've never been a big Batman fan, but those films were fantastic, and there's no denying the popularity of that trilogy, and you can understand a lot of the fans who were big fans of Nolan's films feeling a bit put out by the fact that we'll never see that side of things again as far as the Batman character is concerned and the continuation of that storyline.
and what do you hear? And somebody is talking. Well, I guess you're talking about it also in there about Superman killing. Let's talk about that for a second here, because of course we even touched about it a little bit earlier. But there's been a lot of talk of them having Superman kill Zod, and I've even said before on this show and in the Roundtable show on Thursday that honestly he had no choice at that point if you look at the context of the storyline. But what was your thoughts when you saw it on the big screen? You're like, oh, he just snapped his neck. Holy.
Yeah, I was shocked. It was something that I wasn't expecting. I don't know what I was expecting really, because now when having look at the discussions of people saying, why did he do that? And people saying, well, what was he supposed to do? What were the alternatives? And they telegraphed it quite a bit in the storyline. I mean, Zod says at one point in the fight, there's only one way this ends, Cal. Either you die or I do. So
Right.
you pretty much telegraphed that one would, it was a battle to the death, and it wasn't about that particular family in the railway station at that time, in the subway station. It was about, what was going to happen next. Zod was going to go on a rampage and kill everybody because genetically he was engineered, he was designed to protect his people and to be, to continue on the line of his people. And now that his people don't exist, and as he says, you've taken that away from me, now I'm going to take away from you, the people that you have sworn to protect, and that's what he's going to do. So there is no rehabilitating Zod, there is no confining him, there's no sending him to the Phantom Zone because all that equipment's gone, everything. There
Right.
is no alternatives left. And people in the chat room, as you say, were mentioning that this Superman's no-kill rule is never established in the film, or his opposition to killing is never established in the film. I think no killing is established in life. I mean, most
Right.
people don't want to have to kill
Right.
anybody.
Most rational people, anyway. It's
Yeah, exactly. And especially someone who, we're talking about Clark Kent, it was, the Kents instilled in him to protect people, and, the whole idea of him becoming Superman or of donning the costume or handing himself over to Zod is to protect people. And so, it's obviously something he didn't want to do. You can see that the anguish in his scream that, he didn't want to have to do it. But so people saying, oh, it wasn't established. You don't need to establish no killing because it's just a standard.
you got to admit though, and this is the feeling I got when I saw the entire film. Zod was probably the worst cinematic villain in the Superman, other than Sun guy from Superman 4, but other than that character, but he was just horribly written. I mean, this dude got his ass whooped by a scientist, who, I mean, really, you're a general, you're bred to be a general and be in war. And a scientist kicked your butt. Then you have a farm kid who never fought in his life because he couldn't fight because his dad told him, "Don't fight, don't reveal who you are." So he couldn't. He's never thrown a punch in his life, and he snapped your neck. Wasn't that just like the worst Zod ever?
Well, I mean, we're talking about Zod, who's only a few minutes into this fight has discovered or has mastered his abilities. He's just learned how to fly. He's just mastered to be able to focus and to block out all the sounds and sights. Yet Superman has been absorbing Earth's yellow radiation for 33 years. He's probably stronger. He's mastered in some capacity his abilities. But I guess at this point in time, and even in the chat room, they're saying, why didn't he just block his Zod's eyes?
Yeah.
As I was saying, it wasn't about just this one particular family. It's about drawing a
In
line
general,
in the
he
sand
wasn't going to
and
stop.
saying,
Yeah.
this has got to end, and he happened to get the upper hand in the fight. The novelization makes it a little bit clearer that in that point in the fight, he couldn't get traction, he couldn't adjust his hold, and whether or not it was shot perfectly in the movie or not, or how it was portrayed in the movie was clear about that. I guess it comes down to, again, fan interpretation.
It's funny you said the radiation, the yellow radiation, but in the movie they kind of established that he's not really who he is by the sun. It's more the atmosphere of the planet, which kind of leads me because this is one thing I had an issue with, and it's funny you mentioned it, just brought it back to me. When they're on the ship, obviously, he loses the ability to breathe and he faints, starts coughing blood because he's not used to the Kryptonian atmosphere because he's been raised on Earth. Now, what happens when he's in outer space? There's no atmosphere. He's used to the atmosphere on Earth and had to get used to the atmosphere in the ship, but there's no atmosphere at all in space. He should have just died, or just fainted, or blood
I
from the mouth or
guess
something.
the Kryptonian particles or whatever it was in the spaceship that are the oxygen or whatever it might be. I mean, if you're holding your breath in space, it's different, but when you're breathing in, those.
That's another thing. They actually show him breathing in space, which I was like, what? How can you breathe in space?
When did they show him breathing in space?
He takes a breath actually when he actually is coming out of the ship. If you look at it as he's turning around, you actually see him going and taking the breath.
Oh, okay. I'll have to look at that closely. But
I saw it and I was like, and I'm not trying to nitpick, but I was like,
no.
You could breathe in outer space? Superman's cool, man. I didn't know you could breathe in outer space. Well, I guess if he could fly, I could suspend that disbelief.
But no, they definitely. Jor-El definitely mentions that Earth's younger yellow sun is more nourishing. It's you've absorbed its rays. So in his speech, just before he learns, he takes that first leap in just discovering his flight abilities, you can hear Jor-El's narration about Earth's yellow sun. But they also, as you said, mention that Earth's gravity is lighter, and and those kinds of things. So it's I think they've taken the elements of a lot of the comic books where previously it was all about Earth's gravity and the atmosphere of Earth and all that kind of thing, where more recent years comic books have said it's our yellow sun compared to Krypton's red sun.
Right.
I think the writers decided to take a lot from all different aspects of the Superman mythos and include them in this movie and gel them together.
Now, have they in the comic books? I don't remember this being a storyline. He's always had a red sun, as far as I remember reading the comics. The sun, obviously, on this movie was yellow on Krypton. It was yellowish, anyway, what they showed. That was that threw me off a little bit because I always remember the sun being a red sun.
Yeah, I guess without knowing what a red sun actually looks like in space terms, there are blue suns and things like that. Do they have necessarily a blue hue? I don't know. I've never been on a planet with a red sun to know what their atmosphere looks like.
True. No, that's very true. But even when the shot, you could see the sun in the atmosphere. It is very yellowish, so it's kind of odd. I don't know. Maybe that it has some effect with their atmosphere where it looks like that, and it's kind of an illusion, and it's really red from the outside. I don't know. It could be. I suspend my disbelief also on that one. No, and with all the stuff that's happened in the last few months with all the buzz and everything, what's the one thing that you think has been the one most just aggravating piece of news that's come out? Whether it's the casting, the script, regarding the sequel or the moving of the dates. What's the one thing that sticks out in your mind and you're like, man, this is really the most aggravating thing right now for this movie, considering we've had a successful Superman movie, because Man of Steel, for all intents and purposes, is a box office success globally. even though it did underperform domestically somewhat, and Warner Brothers might have been a little scared because of that, because it didn't reach 300 million. But globally, it did really well. It did a lot better than Superman Returns, so they're, I'm sure, very happy about that.
Well,
What's the one
to
thing that
stop you
sticks
there
out?
for a second, as a reboot, I think Man of Steel is the most successful superhero reboot of any of the characters. I know it did more than Batman Begins. It did more than the Amazing Spider-Man. So yeah, of course it was successful as as a reboot, because we're not talking about an original character that people have never heard about before or whatever. We're talking about a reboot, just like Batman Begins was, just like the Amazing Spider-Man was. It was a box office success. People expected it to do $1 billion like the Avengers, or
Right.
the sequels to the Dark Knight trilogy. I guess, and we'll have to wait till the next movie to see just how successful the follow up is. But then that's where I think, to answer your question, my aggravation came from the fact that it wasn't a standalone Man of Steel sequel, and so therefore we will never know whether or not a follow up to Man of Steel was a box office big success like
Right.
the Dark Knight, which sequels, or the Avengers, or any of those types of Iron Man 2 and that kind of thing, because we've included other characters in, like Batman and Wonder Woman. So, if it is $1 billion box office success, or 700 million, or whatever it might reach, people will attribute the inclusion of the other characters into the movie for its success, rather than looking at it as a Man of Steel success.
Now, do you think that could help or hurt Superman in the long run, though?
Look, I don't know whether Warner Brothers are worried about that. I think they look at their bottom line and their profit margins and say, well, this is successful for us, and that's what counts. That's probably another annoying thing. Are they worried about necessarily
Yeah.
the longevity of the character? I mean, Superman's been around for 75 years. He's been through some good times and bad times. It's been a roller coaster ride for the character. His popularity has waxed and waned over generations. So he'll endure regardless. But whether or not they're worried about whether future Superman movies will be majorly successful, or whether they'll just make a profit for them, I guess that's in the studio's minds.
Now, how many sequels is Ben Affleck exactly signed on for? Is he signed on just to do this one movie plus the Justice League, or is he signed on to do solo pictures also? Do you know?
I don't know personally. I know that most movie studios, when they do sign actors, they sign them on for multi-picture deals. It's usually a three-picture deal, including the one that they signed on for initially. Whether Affleck's his contract is for something different, whether it includes him directing, or what might be involved there, I guess that's between him and the studio.
That's right there interesting, because a lot of people have been saying they would love to see him direct his own standalone Batman movie. Do you think he could tackle that and really give us a good Batman movie? Because to star in it and direct it, that's a lot of work, man. And it's Batman. That's a lot of work.
Yeah, I guess the studio has confidence in him because he did that with Argo. He was, one of the main actors in that, as well as the director, and that was hugely popular and hugely successful. So I guess from a directing point of view, he's shown his mettle there, and they have the confidence in him. And he's a big name, so I guess the confidence they're showing in him will be seen whether or not he does decide to act and direct a future solo Batman movie.
No, well, that's a good question. Also, maybe they'll reboot Batman with a different actor after a few Justice League movies, and he'll just direct them anyway.
Well, yeah, who knows? I mean,
Yeah.
especially with Batman being an older character.
Maybe they'll do a Batman Beyond with him.
Mm-hmm. That's a possibility, I guess.
Yeah, that's right there what I would like to see. Batman Beyond.
Mm-hmm.
Personally, I'm a huge Batman Beyond fan, and I've always thought that would be epic. Actually, as an old man, he's not that far off. Give him another 15 years, he'll be
Yeah.
right there. Which isn't it strange though to think that they're showing us a Batman reboot and they're starting with a 41 or 42-year-old actor. How weird
It
is
is a bit
that?
strange. Yeah, it's not where I would have gone.
No kidding. Again, like you said earlier, man, I really think that the best way would have been to have a younger Batman take off and become Batman, because he's inspired by what happened with Superman. I thought that would have been more epic. But then again, what do I know? I don't write these things. I just nitpick on the radio.
No, it's funny because fans out there all think that they have the best answer, and people are casting this movie and casting aspersions on this movie, and think that the studio has no idea what they're doing and that they know better. So it's interesting to read all the comments that are out there and what people are speculating is going to happen.
People have wars online over these movies, man. It's incredible. I kid you not. If you go to YouTube, you can go to IMDb, anywhere, and there's people fighting like this is sacred, like you're talking Jesus and God to them. It's
Definitely.
amazing. It's amazing how some nerds, I mean, some people, how you
Mm,
people get. Yes, people. Not
people.
comic book nerds at all, no. No, not at all. Dorks. Anyway, but it's amazing how some of these guys get online. And is it just DC that gets this kind of attention? Because I don't remember hearing, a lot of craziness with the Marvel movies. Look, Iron Man is a perfect example. Like anytime there's an Iron Man movie or anything Iron Man, it's nothing but positive buzz. Why can't that happen for DC?
I guess because people have been invested in these characters for so long that they have preconceived ideas of how they're supposed to be portrayed. Iron Man has only been shown in live action in one version now, and that's
Right.
if they ever decide to reboot the Iron Man movies down the future, there'll be people who will be comparing them and criticizing them, to the originals, just like we're doing now with Superman and Batman and all these different characters who have been around on film for a lot longer than some of these Marvel characters who are just now getting their first look at live action films.
Yeah, it's true, and it's funny because with the movement of this film to 2016, they placed it right around X-Men Apocalypse, I believe it's coming out. What do you think? Do you think that DC did that on purpose? Do you think that they did it to compete and maybe start to show off a little bit when they have this great epic Batman versus Superman versus Wonder Woman with Flash, Martian Manhunter, and perhaps Lex Luthor or Justice League somewhere in the middle?
Yeah, they may have jumped the gun a little bit in their announcement. So, I guess they want to keep the hype going and keep fans, talking about it and anticipating it. But, then they just shoot themselves in the foot when they delay it 10 months longer and fans start complaining that now they have to wait even more. I mean, remember the days when you just heard about a movie when you first saw the trailer and that was it? You went and saw the movie and,
Right. Yeah.
you didn't know it was coming out.
I think that's the thing with having so much information on the internet now. Everything is, up to the minute, and they release everything so quickly. It's like and I was having this discussion with a friend of mine about Doctor Who of all things, where we didn't really know much about the 50th anniversary. We didn't know what was going on. There was very hush hush, for who was going to be in it and this and that. And I said, I like that. I wish that movies did more of that, and they didn't tell us anything because when you see it, you see it like with virgin eyes, man. You don't know everything. The one thing I hate is knowing everything about a movie a year in advance. So when I go see it, I can almost recite the dialogue as it's happening, like if I've seen the movie. You know what I mean? So that's the worst thing. And I'll tell you what, when I saw the Phantom Menace trailer in the theaters for the first time, that was epic. The Phantom Menace, we went to see it. We bought tickets to a movie we didn't want to see just to see the trailer. And it was a bunch of us. We were excited. It was the greatest thing ever. And we didn't know anything else about the movie until it came out. And we did it on purpose because we wanted to have that experience. And then it was ruined. And our childhoods were raped. But that's neither here nor there. The point is, it was exciting, and I want that kind of feeling again. And I would hope that they do more of that. And I kind of like what DC does now, where they don't really, tell you all the information. They're kind of like secretive about everything.
No, I definitely agree with you there.
That's almost Nolan-esque, isn't it? Because that's Christopher Nolan does it all the time. So I think they've adapted that to their overall agenda with these films. Now, do you think that we are going to get like a Flash movie and Wonder Woman solo flick anytime soon?
Look, I don't know about any time soon. I definitely think that there's a possibility down the line and that the characters call for it. But I think we'll probably see a joint movie before we see those characters developed in their solo films after they, are jettisoned from a Justice League movie. It's an interesting way of doing it. It's a kind of a reverse way of doing it. But I guess we'll see if it's a successful method.
I mean, I guess it's going to be a surprise because now nobody knows what the hell's going to happen. I mean, I think everybody kind of knew that we might get a Batman down the road joining Henry Cavill's Superman, and I think, like you said, everybody expected to be a young Bruce Wayne. that joins the fun. But now it's completely topsy-turvy. We don't know what's going to happen. So at least that much of it is exciting, where it's going to be at least something when we see it, it's going to catch us by surprise, right? I mean, that's the hope. But
Let's hope.
Again, a 40-something-year-old Batman, that's going to be weird for the first time we see him on screen. And, I think they really went with Ben Affleck because they want to get to that scene from, like, The Dark Knight Returns. That victory
I
scene.
Snyder has said in an interview, I think it was after the live fan event, that they are not adapting The Dark Knight Returns. He just thought that was a recognizable piece that fans would instantly recognize once they read the quote from it. So that was an iconic Superman-Batman meeting, but they're not actually adapting anything from that as far as he was concerned in that interview that he did with Kevin Smith on video.
But how many people lie in Hollywood, Steve?
Well, that's very true. I can only tell you what he's saying. I can't tell you what he's thinking.
One person who is definitely not a liar, and he's always open-minded about these things, is my good friend Oscar Benjamin, who's joining us here. The compassionate wolf himself. You're live on Inside the Jackals Head with Mr. Steve Younis. Welcome, sir.
Hey, how you doing, Angel? How you doing, Steve? Good to talk to you
good,
guys.
Thanks. Good to talk to you too.
I have to say, first of all, the two of you are discussing Superman in a brilliant, wonderfully civilized manner, and the topics you're bringing up are fantastic. So I must commend you on that. So it's a very refreshing conversation, and I like the direction of this conversation. There's some things I disagree with, but the fact that the two of you are bringing it up is fantastic and great. So kudos.
Give us your insight here on what do you think of Man of Steel.
Here's what's going on, and I have an inside source, and it's a very reliable inside source. The Man of Steel and the Justice League movie are being filmed back to back. That's what's going on.
Well, we all know that already.
We've already covered that.
Yeah, you heard that? Okay.
Oh man! See, you got me all excited. I even muted myself so there'll be no interruptions, no sound effects, no noises.
All right. I thought I had a scoop for you guys, but so what?
Jesus! But I appreciate you calling in, man. Do you have any questions for Steve here regarding the movie?
Yeah, Steve. Okay, you and I are on the same. It seems like on the same track on the Man of Steel. Basically,
right.
It seems like you definitely enjoyed it as much as I have. Also,
mm-hmm.
What would you have? There's a couple of issues I'm sure you have with the film. What direction would you like to see the film go, and what avenues would you like to have seen explored in the film?
I probably would have liked to have seen a little more of. I think one of the complaints that people had that maybe I shared was seeing some Superman trying or concerned about the people of Metropolis or the people that were amongst it. He did show at one stage in Smallville telling people to get inside, it's not safe, and he caught that one pilot who fell from the helicopter and landed him safely on the ground. I would have liked to seen a little bit of more of that when they headed to Metropolis, or looking around to see his concern for the people, or attempting to maybe take things away from the city a little bit more. Maybe something along those lines maybe would have calmed some of the complaints that people had about the destruction.
That's a common complaint, and it really strikes me as somewhat bizarre and perhaps a little hypocritical, because as comic book fans and comic book readers, we have grown up with that kind of destruction and reading comics. I mean, take a look at, like I brought up in the chat room, Galacticus, for instance. Here's a being that devoured the world, so we gleefully read it.
That's true, even though your internet is being interrupted for some reason there. Oscar Benjamin, are you there?
Yes, I think you lost me for a minute.
Lost you for a second. Continue, my friend.
Okay. Well, like I was saying...
He was making a good point, though. Before he got all hiccuped there, you were making a good point. Continue.
Yeah. I'm like I started saying, I'm somewhat struck upon this, what I see as a hypocritical reaction to this so-called collateral damage. It was collateral damage, granted, that Superman and Zod, when they're fighting each other in Metropolis. But as comic book readers, we have gleefully loved and read scenes of such destruction on more of a massive level. So why all suddenly are we concerned about, when we are given what exactly we wanted to see all these years reading comic books? Why are we so concerned, and why are we suddenly so weak need when we see this destruction on the screen. I mean, it just strikes me as bizarre and an interesting, reaction.
My thing, real quick, not to cut you off, and I want to let Steve also answer, but real quick, my whole thing is it's bizarre how, yeah, there's a huge amount of destruction, and people complain about that, but it almost seems like people were more upset that Superman killed Zod than they were about the destruction and all the innocent civilians that died during the battle at Metropolis.
Yeah, actually, I saw it the other way around. Most of the complaints after people got over the whole neck snapping thing was the destruction and that how much destruction there was. And I think to answer your question in regards to why were there so many complaints when we quite happily devour this type of stories, I think it's not necessarily the destruction itself, but the non-reaction from Superman at that destruction that was shown in the film was probably what people were looking for. Not the destruction or the level of destruction itself, but Superman's reaction to it.
But you brought up a good point also. This is a Superman that's relatively new and inexperienced. So he's forming his philosophy about the non-killing and what have you, and that's philosophy all of us should have. But what alternative did he have when he's obviously outnumbered by his fellow Kryptonians who are starting to develop their own powers? So he realizes, how can I confront this? These powerful beings, and if he wants to take the battle somewhere else, like a lot of people complain, well, how come he didn't draw them to somewhere else? They're not that stupid. They're obviously going to use the people against him, and his reluctance to battle them, with his full power because of the people around him. So it was actually a stroke of genius on Zod's part. So.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. I 100% agree that there wasn't much option to him. He didn't have a lot of breathing space to kind of formulate these, any alternatives. And I think some of the problem that people had with it was more from an editing point of view in after the fight and all that kind of stuff. It kind of quickly went to a jokey scene where even destroying the satellite and then quickly going back to the Daily Planet, and that's kind of the movie ended. Right. I think something like a fade to black and just a bit of a delay and then kind of go into that next scene would have given people more of an indication that time had passed. We don't, we see Lois in the Daily Planet being offered tickets to a game by Steve Lombard and, and the city seems to be functioning pretty quickly. I think if they'd been given some kind of indication of a time lapse and we've been shown that this is somewhere down the track, people might not have had such a big problem with the ending to the film.
How did that happen? I mean, how did that happen? The city is destroyed, and the next scene, he's driving his bike down Metropolis like it's like nothing happened. And he's working at the Daily Planet.
We don't know how much time has passed.
Exactly.
That's the question. Yeah, that's a big question. How much time has passed?
And I also think, as intelligent, movie viewers and readers, that we should conclude that some time has passed. And,
exactly.
He's dealt with the ramifications and perhaps the consequences of his actions in a private manner.
Maybe he flew backwards on the Earth and turned back time like nothing happened.
Oh God, that's terrible.
But there are certain editing tropes that I think could have been used that would have indicated to people, things like time have passed, passing rather than just a quick cut.
I think a lot of fans would have, not said anything if they would have shown like a scene of some construction work going on as he's going through Metropolis. Maybe a little bit of some of the buildings still being reconstructed. If they show some of that, I think people wouldn't have said anything. But the fact that he's like driving his bike and then there's nothing, it's like nothing happened. That's I think where people are like, wait a second, did a decade pass? Because to rebuild an entire city, man, because I think the report was like what $700 billion in damages to rebuild that would take a long time. I mean, it's taken.
Who reported that?
Well, there's a website that actually did a report that did a calculation of all the damage in the movie. I'll send you a link later.
And take that into consideration.
Based on the destruction in the movie, this website calculated that it would cost about $700 billion to rebuild Metropolis and Smallville.
Yeah, he also calculated that 100 million people had died or something like that, where Zack Snyder tells us it was 5. So
yeah, how does that work, Zack Snyder? Did you teleport the people out of Metropolis? Is that how it happened? Are we doing a Star Trek and Superman crossover that we didn't know about here? What's going on? Are we not teleporting the civilians out of the danger zones? I don't know how that worked, Zach. His action is great, but storytelling, man, I tell you, David Goyer's not my guy. I really, that's why I'm happy they brought in this writer, and now I'll say it again. get the writers to make sure the script is good, and we'll be good. Oscar, we're running short out of time here. I got to let you go, my friend. Thank you for calling in.
Well, thank you for talking to me for a brief minute, and it was a pleasure talking to you gentlemen, as usual.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Steve, listen, I know that we're short on time here, but I wanted to give you a chance to talk about your radio show real quick and give out the website link to the show that you can go and check out. I know that you guys do a podcast every week talking about Superman and, of course, the Speeding Bulletin. Please tell us about this.
Yeah, every Monday night at 7:30 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, Michael Bailey and I do a live broadcast for 1 hour titled Radio KAL Live. We talk about Superman and what's going on in the week of Superman for that particular week. We also do a weekly video report on recapping the Superman news items that have happened in a particular week. That's posted every Friday on the website. And so you can check out everything there at supermanhomepage.com.
Sounds good, my friend. Thank you again so much for being on the show with us and spending here an hour plus with us. We love having you on and hope it's not another year and a half or two before we have you back on, my friend. We've got to have you on here more often. And have
sounds good.
A civilized conversation. How fans should have, not this yelling and bickering and all that stuff. Thank you, Steve. You're a gentleman.
No, my pleasure. Thank you for inviting me on the show. It's been great.
Take care, my friend.